You're listening to the Business Communicators, presented by IABC Houston. And now your hosts, Austin Staton, Hattie Horn, and Thomas Bain.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 15 of the Business Communicators, a podcast presented by IABC Houston. My name's Austin Staton, joined alongside my co-host, Hattie Horn, and as you can tell, Thomas Bain isn't here. So this is 2 straight weeks, which we haven't had the full crew, but Thomas Bain is going full rodeo right now, and is currently in Central Texas clearing brush with his brother and father. And if we do have some B-roll from Thomas, we'll drop it in if you're watching it on YouTube right now. But Thomas, we look forward to having you back next week and having the full crew. But on that note, we do have a special guest this week, and that is Marc Morrison, who is a photographer based out of Austin, Texas, and a good friend of the show, of the podcast. We're excited to have him on here, and we'll get into more conversation with Marc on the art of photography, how the industry has changed in the past few years, and maybe some tips for communications professionals on how they can better engage with photographers and maybe channel their more inner creative side, if you will. But Hattie, you were not on last week's show, and we wish that you were there. But unfortunately, you had some damage from Winter Storm Uri. How is everything going on your end?
You know, that's funny. I didn't even know the storm had a name other than disaster. I spent more time with plumbers and contractors. We lost water for a week. We lost power for a week, of course, just like everybody else. I'm not, and I feel for everyone that has gone through this. But now we're working to restore everything. My whole master bedroom, bathroom, closet. There's no sheetrock. But the upside, and there is an upside, believe it or not, will come back better.
Absolutely.
And so, other than that, but I also want to thank Dan for pitching in. He did such an awesome job. Love you, Dan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, glad to hear that everything's going well, and glad that you're finding, the brighter side of the situation. I think that's always helpful. And actually, Marc has worked with Chip and Joanna Gaines in the past, so maybe we can play that connection and see if we can get you on the new Fixer Upper session. But
that show.
We'll dive into that maybe in a little bit more. But on that note, if you want to follow our work, you can follow us on social media. Just search @BizCommunicator on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the platforms. We're also on LinkedIn. You can also visit our website, thebusinesscommunicators.com. If you want to give us feedback, we prefer that it's done, obviously, in a 5-star review on iTunes. But if you want to reach us, you can email us, podcast@IABC Houston, or you can text podcast 713-360-0133. But without further ado, let's get to our guest, Marc Morrison. And Marc's a guy that I've known for, gosh, Marc, it's been, 10 years almost? It's just been absolutely crazy. But so for those that don't know Marc, he's a photographer based in Austin, Texas, does amazing portrait photography. Some of the best out there. You've won many awards. You've shot with so many big brands, so many celebrities, in just, what was it, November, December, I believe you shot with Samsung in Tan, France, on a new ad campaign. You've shot with Deshaun Watson, Cardi B, just so many amazing photographers. And I think that's the coolest thing about you is I met you through just like industrial photography, in the energy sector. And then as I've gotten to know you, I've gotten to know more and more the quality of work that you do. And it's just absolutely incredible. So both Hattie and I are excited to have you on the podcast this week.
Well, thank you guys so very much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm turning 3 shades of red after that introduction. But thank you so much. We definitely met through sort of corporate industrial, all of us, and it's really interesting because that is probably one of the most interesting sectors or genres in which I work, because there are always so many challenges, whether it's, it's showing the scale, it being safe, the number of courses that we have to take in order to qualify to shoot those jobs. So it is an awful lot of fun. And those jobs can also last a really long time, as opposed to the celebrity work, which is also fun. And most of that is, we have 15 minutes to get a portrait, and so we're not given a whole lot of time, but that also sort of provides its own challenges.
Photography to me is so fascinating because generally when when people think of communications, they think of, okay, internal comms, media affairs, crisis, but then there's this whole creative side. While I think for the most part, communicators are good at being well-rounded, I think that a lot of communicators have gaps when it comes to creativity and developing content, like photography, graphic design, video work. And I really have so much respect for people that take the time to learn a new skill, that maybe they know that they have a gap in video editing. And so they take the time to watch a course on LinkedIn Learning or YouTube and learn how to do Adobe Premiere Pro. But I think people like you, Marc, fill a gap that is so critical when it comes to storytelling. How do you look at photography as a critical tool in telling that corporate story, telling that story about, a family who is doing amazing work, or that celebrity who is working with the brand? How do you use your camera and your lens to tell that story?
That's a really good question. Like I think everything else within communication, having the proper tool set is just so important. I can only speak to me, but I double majored in photojournalism and political science because I intended to be yes, my intention was to be a war correspondent. That's what I really, really wanted to do. And when I was in school, was right around the time that most of the turmoil was happening in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala. And that was going to be my first destination when I graduated. I wanted to find a job, go down there and show the world what was going on. So I really did my best to hone my journalism skills. And of course, in journalism, especially in photography, we were always taught that we may not be, our photos may not accompany an article, may not accompany a story. We may not even have a caption. So do your very best to convey the story within the photograph. And that is not as easy as one might think. And you really have to remove yourself from a situation and look at what's going on and try and figure out in one or two images. It's not video, it's not film. We didn't have the opportunity to do an interview or show different angles. And this would allow us, or really trained us, to try and tell a story in very few images. And that actually is the same concept that I brought with me into what I'm doing today. It's not that I'm shooting reportage or reporting, it's that I try and tell a story. And there's a very fine balance in being a journalist and then being a communicator within the business sector or within the entertainment editorial sector. Because on one hand, you really want to show people as they are, or a refinery as it is, or a ship as it is. But there are imperfections in everything, with everything, and most people don't want to see those imperfections. And so instead of using a lot of post-production, which we have done in the past and still do in some of our work, we try and utilize light, we try and utilize angles, and we try and make people, items, things look as pretty as possible or as interesting as possible. And let me just touch on one other thing really quickly, and that is, when you said that you really appreciate the fact when communicators maybe go back to school and learn editing or take a course in photography. I think there are two benefits to that. One, of course, is the end product, where then you have a new skill or something else that you can offer. But two, that gives you the tools to be able to creatively discuss your project with the videographer, photographer, drone operator.
Absolutely.
And then that way, everybody is on the same page.
I think that's really good the way you just said that, because I look at photography as visual artistry. I don't have an extensive background in photography or even videography, but as a communicator, and my background is creative. I understand creative concepts, and I understand how to put together a story. So I may not necessarily have all the semantics and all the technical and all of that. But what I can appreciate about communicators who are working with photographers, if they have some idea of concept and how visual, photographs or images do tell a story, they can have a better approach to how to work with that photographer. Because sometimes there are communicators who come into the picture, they don't really know what they want because they can't see it. And so they're relying on that photographer to advise or counsel them as to, well, what do you think it looks like? So I can appreciate them going to school and understanding photography, but on the other hand, if they don't have an imagination
Mhm.
or understand visual concepts, it can be even a bigger challenge for them, from my perspective.
Oh, I agree 100%. And you actually touched on so many different topics. I'm not going to. What we try and do is, when we're given an assignment, we try and figure out what the end use is going to be, what the deliverables are going to be. And it depends, is this going to be used internally, externally, just social? There's so many different avenues to explore to be able for us to deliver to you guys what it is exactly you're looking for. And one of the things we do now, and I think both of you guys know this, is when we're working with a new client or on a new project, we almost always do work with pitch decks now, right? And that's really easy for someone to do because all they have to do is go to the magazine store, get online. You're talking about the stock agencies earlier. And okay, if you aren't able to tell us what you like, I bet you can tell us a lot of things that you don't like. And that also saves plenty of time because we're not wasting our time delivering something to you that that we know you're not interested in. So there are so many different ways for the communication to take place to be advantageous, I think, for everybody.
One of the things I really appreciated about you and Yessie, you're both very different types of visual artists. As far as I'm concerned, you're both unique in your approaches to things. And we worked together with one of my refinery clients a few years ago, just working to put together some sort of training session for them. And while they didn't, like you were saying, they didn't know what they wanted, they could tell you what they didn't like about it, which did save a lot of time. And then you had myself there who knew how to see it and articulate it for you. So that was also helpful. And so from a communications practitioner, again, who is working with a photographer and then working with your business, it's always good to have some sort of idea to that is going to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Hey, Mark, we only have an hour for this training. We want to make sure that we're capturing these particular speakers. And while you're capturing them, you're capturing all of that, and then we're coming back to the editing process. Hey, Mark, there are some key things there we think we want you to focus on here. And so those are some of the things that we as communicators need to make sure that we're leveling up in our knowledge to kind of help you both get through it as efficiently and effectively as possible.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yesenia Rodriguez is my partner in crime. She is a wonderful DP and drone operator. And whereas we work a lot together, we work probably even more separate on different types of jobs. But the one thing that both of us love, even though we, like you said, Hattie, we do kind of come at it from different angles, is we love interaction with the client, with the creatives, because that really, when you start saying, okay, I know everything, I don't need to learn, client, I don't want to talk to you, I've done this 1,000 times, then it's time to get out of the business, because we are a service provider. And if we aren't providing you what you need, what you can utilize, then we're not providing that service. And I think you guys both know, we both love it. We're very passionate about our clients being happy, and we'll work to just about any length to make sure that happens. Because these jobs that we're working on, let's be honest. I mean, there are lots of time, there's lots of money, there's lots of safety issues that could go wrong. And, you guys are entrusting us to go into locations that we could potentially shut down and cost millions of dollars if we don't do it correctly. So it is so important to listen on every single level and produce exactly what it is you're looking for. And the only way anybody can do that is through clear communications and collaboration. I think collaboration is another huge topic that we could spend another day on. But yeah.
Well, kind of on the note of collaboration, I mean, both you and Hattie just alluded to Yessi, and for those that don't know, as Mark mentioned, Yesenia Rodriguez is amazing drone pilot, aerial photographer, produces some really stunning work, and I think you both do a great job of collaborating together. But at the same time, we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years how important it is to be able to adapt when it comes to photography and content creation. 10 to 15 years ago, if you wanted aerial photographs of an offshore platform, you had to rent a helicopter. And now you can put up a DJI drone, put it in the sky, and it's more accessible. It's way more cost effective. So I'm kind of curious from your end, when it comes to the collaboration that you and Yessi do. I think you guys will first off make a great team, but how do you guys stay relevant and modern and adapt to these changes, such as drone technology and new cameras and new client demands? How do you stay relevant and kind of adapt your game to make sure that you're still providing an amazing product?
That's very kind of you. I agree. The adapting and staying relevant is something that is so important. I'll share a really short story with you. One of the photographer's agents, I guess it was last year, put on, obviously I'm a little older than you are, Austin and Hattie. We're not millennials, but we literally went to a day-long seminar in Dallas. It was all photographers. And the topic was, how should photographers and other creatives that have been in the business for a while be able to communicate with millennials? I kid you not, we spent an entire day on that topic. And it taught me an awful lot. But what it definitely taught, or what it definitely instilled, is that education, it has to continue. And it has to be not only communication, it has to be technical. You have to really be, both Yessi and I are very much tech heads. Austin, I know you are too. And so that really helps, right? So when you're watching television at night, you're also reading the manual to the new drone or camera or, whatever software. And it is also really nice because both of us are always perusing social like everybody else. And lots of times it's easy for one person to miss something, but the other person catches it. And so we're constantly, I didn't know anything about Clubhouse. Yes, he told me about it. And you, and I would have found out eventually, but that stepped up my game. But to get back to your point, sorry, it is very important to remain relevant creatively and technically. If you go back in time, there have been so many trends within photography. Annie Leibovitz started one of the first trends that I can remember, and that was, the beautifully lit environmental portraits, with deep, dark blue skies and just vibrant colors. Well, that was fantastic in the mid 80s. She's not doing that any longer. And so we hear from photographers all the time, well, how do you light like Annie? Well, number one, it's very simple. And number two, it's not relevant. Nobody wants to see that unless you're just doing something for yourself. And so there have been so many different trends. And you guys know, because, you're at the forefront of communication. So by the time you see a particular lighting scheme on the cover of Vogue, or the way Annie, lit Simone Biles, with kind of the side lighting, and now everybody wants to do it, it's too late. That was 6 months ago. You have to stay on top of the trends because your clients are going to say, I want it to look like that. And if you can't do it, they're going to go to somebody that can. Again, we're trying to provide you with what you want.
how do you push back with clients that say, I want this look? You know, I look at like video, for example. Sam Colder, he's probably in his 20s, one of the most talented video creators out there. And he's just got a beautiful Instagram page. But probably 2 or 3 years ago, he really focused on that teal and orange look that was really popular, especially on social media. And so many creatives said they wanted that look. And so how do you kind of push back to clients and say, hey, you know, let's not go with, you know, that Annie Leibovitz. Let's not go with the Sam Colder look. That's outdated. How do you push back and say and suggest that maybe you try a different approach?
What in that case? Well, first of all, I am from the school of, you know, the client is always right at the end of the day. I mean, we definitely want to deliver what they want. Now, if they are producing a Sam Colder look, the thing I have to say about that is if you can go online and find anybody that produces a color grade that you can buy and that's called the Sam Colder look, it's gone. It's done. As soon as everybody can do something like that, everybody will do something like that, and you see it ad nauseum. So what we do is typically if somebody says, okay, I really want this particular look, and I'll say, okay, if you really want it, then on my own dime, I would like to shoot it in a different way. So there are many instances where we produce multiple images, and the client is obviously free to go with what they want because they're the client. One other thing that's very important, if you come to us and you say, okay, we have a campaign that we're going to launch in December and we want the Sam Colder, Annie Leibovitz look, we'll work really, really hard to say that, look, this is pretty stale right now. In 8 months, no, it's just going to be a mistake. But again, we'll produce what they want from us, but we will do our best to guide them in the right direction.
What has been the most challenging type of project you've worked on as far as photography?
I would say that it's something that we've probably done with you guys. When we are working on let's say a new oil rig, a new oil platform, those are extremely challenging because the impressive part of something like that is its physical size. And with video, it's much easier to show relationship between person and rig. In stills, it's very difficult to do. If you can see the person, then then you're just going to see a small part of the rig. So constantly looking for angles. Yessie does an amazing drone job on the offshore rigs, and that really helps a lot. But I would say that probably the offshore rigs are some of the most difficult things we have to, some of the most difficult subjects that we have to shoot. There's so many safety regulations. We have to go through, what do we have to go through? Boisiet, which is offshore training. Before we can fly out there, we have to go through, get our rig pass. There's probably 2 weeks worth of straight training that we have to recomplete most of every 4 years to maintain our certifications to go offshore. And then once you're offshore, you have to convince the people that you're working with that you know what you're doing and you're not a safety hazard for them to allow you to do those things. So there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of trust involved. You better have a heck of a liability insurance policy, which we do have. There's a lot of those types of things that you just want all your ducks in a row. That's for sure.
I'm curious about something. You've done quite a few leader headshots, and some of them can be so typical. How do you, from a photographer standpoint, at least try to make them a little bit more? I know they want to be authoritative, but they're just so conservative and they don't really say much anymore. How do you try to fix that?
Well, if it's okay to mention a name in a good way, you guys both know Starlee Sykes, who's vice president of Gulf of Mexico and Canada for BP. It was time for a new set of headshots. And And as you guys know, we don't usually have the ability to talk to the VIP before the shot. We're, working with all of their handlers and their associates and assistants. And so the assistants are saying, well, let's just do what we did last time. And, Starlee is young, she's vibrant. And, I'm talking to Yessie and I'm going, wouldn't it be great if we could do like an environmental portrait or, sitting down on a couch so what we did was we went up there and arranged to do a couple of test shots, not with her, but just different scenarios that we thought she would fit in nicely. And we submitted those to her assistants, her EA, and she loved them. So that's kind of the only way we've been successful in talking people into going a new direction. I don't know, does that help? Does that answer? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it does, because you're right. Sometimes it is difficult to get into them and try to suggest something because you're working with 55 people before you get to them.
Right. Actually, I remember, I think we were doing a headshot shoot. I know Austin came in. I don't think we didn't shoot you. And I forgot who the person was we were working with. And she said, everybody has a side that they may not know it, but everybody has a side which they look better, right or left side. Straight onto the camera is usually not what we would advise. And there was a young lady, I forget, in her 40s, and she came in and she goes, let's just shoot from the right side only. And I was looking at her. What I ask everybody to do as soon as I see them is I have them sit and I shoot from the right and I shoot from the left. I shoot straight on and I look at it and to try and determine what's going to be best. And she was pretty adamant about the right side. And we were just about done. At the very end, I said, would you just mind doing this? And it was exposing her left side because I could see her lines and they just look really nice. And she picked everyone on the left side at the end of the day. She didn't pick any of the right side ones. So sometimes when you see something, and I'm pretty passionate about what I do. I love it. If I take a job, I love the job. And I really want, the worst thing for me is for somebody to say, look, this is terrible. Can you redo this? And I think, Austin, you've been part of some of those. I hate it. I hate when, things come out and I don't like them. And so we do everything we can to make sure when we leave that we have in the can what people like.
I am not a fan of headshots, kind of alluding to what Hattie said. They're just, to me, they're dull. And
yes.
I agree.
I just started work at a new company, and for background, I actually reached out to Mark, seeing if, he could track down a headshot that we took like 2 or 3 years ago, because I didn't have it anymore. And on my LinkedIn page, and it's the same that you can find on, the Business Communicators website, it's a shot that, it's formatted like a headshot, but it's in the middle of Tokyo. And to me, that reflects way more of my personality. It shows that I'm adventurous, that I like traveling, that I like meeting people. And I think that is more inviting, at least personally, I think that's more inviting than a standard headshot with a white background and a suit.
I agree. And that's why I changed my shot. I had a friend of mine take a couple of shots and I had Austin upload it. And I just thought, this is how I'm feeling right now. I wasn't feeling this buttoned up look that didn't even make me feel who I was.
Right.
Yeah, so I just don't like the typical headshot. I think they're boring. They don't say anything about that person's personality.
Sure.
Or character.
I totally agree. And we're running into this a lot. Here's another name that it won't get anyone in trouble. John Hess, who is the president of Hess Energy Corporation, he absolutely positively hates his headshots. And so every year his headshots are him speaking at an event. He's usually like this in mid-sentence. That's what he likes. And we're seeing that more and more. And I kind of agree. I love the candid look. Everybody, you get in front of the camera and it's an immediate deer in the headlights, and it takes forever to talk people out of that look. And, and they're, obviously they're going to be much more comfortable in the middle of Tokyo than they are in the studio with everyone staring at them. I totally agree.
Well, it's like you look at your website, which is markmorrison.com, and we'll include a link to that. And then also Mark's Instagram in the show notes below. But I mean, you look at just some of the portrait photography that you have on there, and it's amazing. Like, you just look at some of these images, and you can almost tell that there's a story behind each person, whether it's someone working on an offshore platform, or whether it's Myles Garrett, or Olympians, or Cardi B. I mean, it just, you feel like you know more about that person. Do you think maybe that's the new direction, and just getting rid of that stuffy headshot? And do you maybe find that more fun from your end? Do you find that more challenging your creativity?
Oh, no, I agree with everything you said. I love it. I would love to only do that. It's definitely not a challenge because, when people are moving around naturally, so in the film industry, there's something when you're shooting a take. I know you guys know this, but anybody that doesn't, when you're shooting a take and you say action, that means that the actor is kind of in that headshot situation. They know that they have to be on their game. They have to deliver their lines, but they also they'll yell out, a director yell out to the camera crew 50-50. And what that means is roll on a candid situation. It means that this isn't what is scripted, but if they see their actors doing something interesting, they'll say 50-50, and that means everyone turn on your cameras and let's capture what's going on because we'll be able to use this somewhere. And I like to think that sometimes we get some of our best headshots 50-50 when they're not expecting us to shoot, right? And, technically these days, even though, we strobe everything or use continuous lighting, but technically these days with the cameras that we're using that can shoot in such high sensitivity range, we can get some phenomenal pictures with the lights aren't in the exact right location these days. So, technology has really opened up the doors for us. When I started, I've done many things within photography, but one of the things I did early in my career was I was a unit still photographer. And for those of you that don't know, when a motion picture or a television commercial, anything's being shot, there's always a still photographer there shooting exactly what the cameras are shooting. But they're also doing a lot of candid shots as well. And I used to do that. And it was a tremendous amount of fun, but you're always photographing somebody else's idea, somebody else's concept. Because you're doing what the director is doing. But one of the things that definitely taught me was how to work with the gaffer and the lighting, the DP, the cinematographer, and how to work with lighting scenarios. And that has helped me tremendously in getting some of the most dramatic shots that I think that I've taken, because you don't have to have the light right in front of somebody. So, when you see many proper DPs working, they don't shoot, with the light straight on somebody. They use backlight, they use side light, they use bottom, top light. They want to make it interesting. And there's no reason in photography we can't do the same thing. Most people don't, or a lot of people don't, but I love it. And, I think it adds a little bit more interest. Headshots as well. If you have to do that standard headshot, throw in a nice little side light, give them a little separation, make it a little dramatic. So even if you have to do that gray background headshot, there are many things that you can do to jazz it up a little bit that the client will never know until they see the picture and they'll go, wow, that's really cool. So there's lots of stuff, lots of tricks, I think, out there.
If there was a time where you didn't have to shoot certain types of subjects or stuff, what would it be and why?
My real simple philosophy is don't agree to photograph anything I don't feel comfortable doing. I think that you're not being true to yourself. I think that you certainly aren't being fair to a client. And so, there have been many times when people have proposed certain things. What's really funny is this is really going to date me. And when I was coming up in school and everybody heard, what are you going to do? Photographer? Oh, you want to go shoot for Playboy. And no, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I wanted to shoot for National Geographic. It's just like, of course, now Playboy's not a big thing, right? You have the internet. Nobody even knows what Playboy is. But back in my day, that's what everybody thought. I'm not a beauty shooter. I don't pretend to be. I don't want to be. That's not my thing. I appreciate it. There are some amazing photographers in the world of fashion and beauty, but that's not my style. So I would definitely have to stay away from something like that. Anything to do with the wedding, a bar mitzvah, graduation, I don't know what to do. I mean, those guys do their thing, and I don't know what that is. And I didn't want to be at my graduation, but my parents said, you will be there because we're going to come up for it. So I sure don't want to be at anybody else's. I mean, family, things like that, sure. But, those types of things, I'm not really interested. I'm also not interested in shooting anybody anywhere at any time that doesn't want to be there, because that always shows. And sometimes, some of the jocks or some of the musicians, they put on that front, oh God, another one. But as soon as you have 2 seconds with them and you chat with them, and you get in your groove, then, everybody is super nice and okay, yeah, you're okay. You're not gonna. And then the other thing too, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of whatever on this, is there are a lot of photographers. I run into this. You guys have run into this, I'm sure. Really think they're God's gift to the world and think that they're brain surgeons basically. And I don't get that. I mean, there's so many creatives that are like that, not just photographers, but a lot of filmmakers, directors, things like that. And it's just it's not my thing. Even the artists that we deal with, none of them are like that. When we shot Cardi B, we had to do a portrait of her, and it was a night that she was going to perform in New Orleans. And she said, and it was a big, I think Fetty Wap and MGK, and there were like 4 or 5 artists. So she was going on late. And, we shot portraits of all of them that day. And then we stuck around for the show. And actually it was really funny because I was backstage with Cardi B. We were doing a couple of shots backstage that the client wanted. And Yessie's, I come back and Yessie's at the very front of the stage, and she's just smiling from ear to ear. And this is really right before she hit it. Well, she already hit it really big. But I said, what's going on? She goes, she is just awesome, and she was. But anyway, so Cardi asked early in the day if we could do the portrait after the set. So that we knew that was going to be like at 2 a.m. And the way the portrait was set up, it was set up in an elevator way up in the back of the venue. And so Cardi, in her whole outfit and super high heels, because the place still had a bunch of fans in it, she had to walk the fire escape in those heels up like 3 stories to get to the elevator for this shot. And this was 2 or 3 in the morning when she was, as professional as it gets. And I love working with people like that. She knew we had to get the shot. She knew that she wanted to do the shot, and she was willing to do it to get there, to do the shot. And I love people like that. I mean, you walk away from something like that, you just can't go to sleep. You're so excited. She was awesome. The shot was awesome. It was a great night. So, and I still get incredibly excited about the work that we do.
Nice.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the misconceptions about that everybody has. Everybody goes, "Who is the nicest person?" And just tell me to be quiet if you want me to stop, please.
No, I'm loving this.
But they go, "Who is the nicest person or who's the most professional person you've ever worked with?" And they expect it to be some country artist or something, but probably it has to be Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne was probably we had a pretty big crew. This was a big shoot. And I don't know if you guys know anything about Rap-A-Lot Records, Jay Prince, and he owns it. And so it was out at Jay Prince's ranch out in around Prairie View. And we had to do an ad with Lil Wayne. And then afterwards, we were doing a couple of, personal shots for him. And we had, it was a big crew because there was a lot of stuff. And the one and only time this has ever happened out of all my years, when we were done, Lil Wayne personally came over. Not only did he shake everyone's hand on the crew, he remembered everybody's name.
That's
And nobody has
amazing.
ever done that. Nobody has ever done that. And, that was a few years ago, and that will always stick with me. Yeah. Yeah. And then we did Stevie Ray Vaughan at the Astronome before he was doing his set. He was opening for The Who, and we had a studio set up in the back. We had to do just a really quick shot, and the shot I needed was of Stevie Ray and his band Double Trouble. But there was a Texas Monthly photographer next to me, and she just needed Stevie Ray, and he refused to do it. Not because he was a jerk. He said, "Look, we're a band, and that we'll either do the shot with the band, or we're not doing solo shots." And I thought, man, that's pretty cool. Having that kind of allegiance to the guys that got him where he is. I thought that was really neat. So some of these guys really surprise you in a good way.
Yeah, I always say people seem to be surprised when they hear about how nice some folks are. And I say, well, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us.
Or
And,
somebody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
there you go. There you go. Hey.
But I think it's a good lesson at the end of the day that, like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do, like, kindness matters at the end of the day. And respect matters, and it doesn't matter what part of the globe you're from. People are just like us, and that's one of the things Mark and I were texting about last week after the winter storms. Just the ability to travel and see the world through a different lens, and how even if you think you're having a rough time, there's probably someone in the world that is going through something either similar that you are right now, or something much worse.
Yep.
And I'm kind of curious, Mark, from your end, you've been able to do so many incredible things because of your talent, your art, your craft. You've been able to travel all across the world. How is being able to travel opened up your creativity and almost given you maybe a new eye on things?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And actually, probably I have a huge debt of gratitude to go to one of my other favorite IABC people, and that's Ben Wheatley in Houston. Ben hired me to do a couple of amazing international jobs, and that really, thanks to him, that really opened the door to be able to see so much of the world. One of the shoots that I went on, and I look back on a lot of these types of shoots in not just to stay grounded, but to try and realize, how lucky we all are. Hattie, you lost so much during the winter storm. We didn't have power for 4 days. When the water finally came on, we had busted pipes, and we had to, we had to get a pump and get all the water out of the, under the house. But in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing, because when I was in college, I went to Haiti and to Port-au-Prince, and we shot in a place called the City of Death, and it's a leper colony right in the center of Port-au-Prince. And their source of water was the city sewage. And, this was well over 30 years ago. And I look back on that like it was yesterday. And, thanks to Ben Wheatley, I was able to go to Guatemala and El Salvador right after the Civil War, when I was dying to go. And he's the one that kind of found the avenue for me to be able to do that. And I went with the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word, which is an order of nuns in Houston. And they are a very interesting order because they were all Irish back in the day. And they were all there because they had the choice of joining a sisterhood or becoming the wife of a potato farmer during the potato famines in Ireland. And so these ladies were very much humanitarians. And so I was on the road with these lovely, lovely people. And there was no money. I mean, they were very self-sufficient. They had orphanages in El Salvador and in Guatemala, and we would get around on the public buses. We were actually, my first run-in with a gun, we were on a bus from Guatemala City up north to Huehuetenango, and our bus was pulled over by the military. And when they saw my U.S. passport, I was on my knees outside with a machine gun in my face. The government hated the clergy. They hated journalists. They hated anything to do with education. And I guess I was naive because I wasn't as scared as I guess I could have been. Obviously, I made it out okay. But when you see what such a huge percentage of the world is living through every single day. Another phenomenal project that I went on for Ben was up in it was in Azerbaijan, and we were visiting the refugee camps on the Armenian border, and these are the same camps that within the news lately the Armenians have been shelling the Azerbaijanis and vice versa. And we went there. It's Houston hot there. These families are living in boxcars, railroad cars, and the pictures were amazing. And I got invited into one. These railroad cars had nothing in them. I mean, it was a room, right? No air conditioning, no water, no place to use the bathroom. And they would invite me in, and they would put on their best to have a picture made. And it was, they were in fur in the summertime in this boxcar, just to make a nice picture. I mean, they were just such lovely people, but they don't have a home, right? They can't go back to Armenia. They can't stay in Azerbaijan. It's just, when you see what's going on in the world, you realize how fortunate we really are.
Preach on that. And I know that's something Hattie and I are both looking forward to doing, is getting out there and traveling again, just having conversations with people. I don't know. It just really impacts your life a lot, and just seeing the world through a different lens and realizing that, the world is a massive place, and
absolutely
people should go out and see it. So if you don't have your passport, I highly recommend getting your passport. And once the world opens up, don't go to the fancy resorts. I mean, sure, if you want to go to a fancy resort, that's fine. But go actually explore a city.
Take the beaten path.
Exactly. Go off, meet with the locals, have conversations, and some of your best memories are going to come from doing that. Say yes to those opportunities. That's my little TED Talk for the day. But
that's a great TED Talk. I just I think what kills me the most, or not kills me, what really I don't understand are prejudices in any way. When I first moved to Houston in the 70s, I grew up in Northern California, and my mom went to Merritt Community College with Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. And I had a peace sign around my neck. I had long hair, and I moved in the 70s to Houston. And I was by far and away the only person in there that didn't have a buzz cut and didn't have, it was an interesting time. I'll just say that. And, and I'm not going to lie, I got the beaten out of me a few times, and all because I looked a little different and I acted a little different, and I didn't know what hunting was. We didn't do that in Northern California, and you just have to meet people. You have to spend time with them. Like you said, Austin, I mean, in Azerbaijan, and I was there quite a long time ago, there was no money. The oil industry was really just starting to, it was way before the pipeline and all that. And so, but these people, just strangers, you're there taking a picture and they'd invite you home to have a meal with them. Who does that? I mean, these people do that. Just amazing,
Well, it's funny that you say that kind of stuff. You can be a stranger in your own land sometimes. But I like what you're saying. You got to be open to differences. You got to be open to different types of conversations and all kinds of things. So, yeah.
Seek discomfort, say yes, all those different ideologies. But Marc, it's been great having you on the podcast. And for our listeners out there, we actually debuted a new segment last week. And Marc, we're gonna bring you in on this. But last week we asked a question, which was, what are the things in life? What are the simple things in life that bring you joy? And we actually had some really positive feedback. Alison Christie from the UK said trees. Christine from, I don't know where Christine's from, I think Houston. She said food brings her joy. We had some people on LinkedIn say sunshine. So it was really interesting conversation. But what we're going to do moving forward is, I mentioned this last week, we've got the writing prompts. We're going to use this as a time for extemporaneous speaking, and we want all of our listeners to answer the question with us on social media. So we'll share this video, we'll share the link on social. But Mark and Hattie, we're going to put you both on the spot this week. So Mark, I want you to tell me when to stop scrolling.
Now.
All right, Hattie, left or right?
Left.
All right, Mark, 1, 2, or 3?
2.
All right. So if you would have
God,
gone,
you're smiling. I don't know.
If you would have gone with 1, it would have been a California question. So that would have been too random and too funny. But the second question on the page is, and this is for both of you, what do you crave and how often do you crave it?
Hattie?
Fried chicken.
Good choice.
At least once a week. And wings. Fried chicken wings.
Where's the best spot to get them?
My house.
I love it. I love it. Mark, what about you?
If I'm on location, then it would be being around dogs. If I'm not at home, then that brings me a lot of comfort, a lot of good memories. If it's food, it's pizza, 100% all the time.
Yeah, good choices. I think my answer last week actually maybe fits into this. I said connections last week for simple things that bring me joy. But I think things that I crave is really traveling and kind of what you said, just getting your eyes open to the world. And that's why 2020 kind of sucked, is because I didn't get to go anywhere. And I know that's very first world problems of me to say. And probably not good when it talks about, when you look at my carbon footprint throughout the world, but it's something that I love and I crave, just meeting people and hearing different stories, and thinking you're only going to have a 5-minute conversation, it turns into a 2-hour conversation. So those are the best type of moments. So for our listeners out there on social media, if you're watching this on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, drop it down in the comments. What are things that you crave and how often do you crave it? Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Business Communicators podcast. And, for our listeners out there that maybe want to connect with you, maybe they want to hire you or Yessie for a project, or maybe they just want to pick your brain and kind of, get some tips or insights. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you or follow your work?
Thank you very much. Yeah, if you look at Marc Morrison, Marc is with a C, marcmorrison.com. My website's there, and there's a contact page. I answer everybody that sends me an email. So that's probably the best bet. Or connect through Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. LinkedIn's good. Drop me an invite on LinkedIn. Soon Clubhouse, Twitter. I answer everybody all the time.
Yeah, Mark is incredibly responsive and such a wonderful person, and we're definitely thrilled to have you on this week's show. Hattie, any parting words before we close this out today?
I just, not really, other than thank you, Mark, so much for joining us. It is just a joy to have you on, and it's always a pleasure working with you. And Thomas, I miss you and hope to see you soon.
And on another note, Hattie is celebrating her 21st birthday this Thursday. So
every year, all month.
Excellent.
So be sure to drop Hattie a happy birthday note, and she'll absolutely love it. But really quickly, on behalf of our sponsors, the show wouldn't be possible without Pierpont Communications and Mike Grant, so we definitely thank them for their support. Also thank IABC Houston for their support. And again, you can follow our work on social media at Biz Communicator on all the channels. And also visit Mark's website, marcmorrison.com, and check him out on LinkedIn and all the channels. We'll link those relevant links below in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. But on behalf of my co-host this week, Hattie Horn, and our guest, Marc Morrison, my name's Austin Staton, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.